The airfield at Thorpe Abbotts lay under a blanket of darkness, its edges barely illuminated by the faint glow of hooded lamps. Engines coughed to life in staggered rhythm, each thunderous roar shaking the frozen night. Mechanics scurried between hulking silhouettes of B-17 flying fortresses, their breath turning into clouds in the bitter January cold of 1944. Captain William Hawk Harrington adjusted the leather strap of his flight helmet, his jaw tightening as he stared across the airstrip. Tonight's mission was no ordinary sortie. They were bound for Berlin, the heart of Hitler's war machine. Intelligence reports had confirmed heavy flak batteries and the possibility of night fighter ambushes. But orders were orders, and America's 8th Air Force would not falter. "Berlin," murmured Lieutenant Jack McNeil, the bombardier, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "Of all places. They really want us dead tonight, don't they?" Hawk glanced at him, offering a grim smile. "That's why we fly, Jack. To show them we won't back down." Inside the cockpit, the crew took their stations. Sergeant Alvarez, the tail gunner, slapped his gloves against his thighs, muttering a prayer in Spanish. Beside him, Corporal O'Connor, the waist gunner, checked his twin .50 caliber Brownings with practiced hands. The fortress, code-named Stardust Lady, was more than metal and rivets. She was their guardian angel in the endless black sky. At 2,200 hours, the flare gun cracked upward, signaling takeoff. One by one, the bombers lumbered down the runway, their engines straining before lifting into the night. The Stardust Lady rose, her wings slicing through the icy air, climbing to join the shimmering formation of over 200 aircraft. Beneath them, England shrank into a patchwork of twinkling lights before dissolving into the darkness of the North Sea. The crew settled into the monotony of flight. Hours stretched endlessly as they crossed enemy territory. Below, the black landscape revealed no features, only the occasional glimmer of moonlight on rivers or snow. Oxygen masks pressed cold against their faces as they climbed higher, frost crusting over the cockpit windows. Radio chatter reports fighters over Bremen. Sergeant Miller, the radio operator, crackled through the intercom. His voice was calm, but Hawk caught the tremor beneath it. "Keep sharp, gunners," Hawk ordered. As they pushed deeper into Germany, the night erupted. Searchlights stabbed upward in jagged beams, clawing at the heavens. The first bursts of flak exploded nearby, black flowers blooming in the sky. The fortress jolted as shrapnel clanged against her fuselage. "Jesus, close one!" O'Connor yelled. "They're walking it right onto us." Hawk gritted his teeth, maneuvering the bomber gently. Too much deviation would break formation, making them easy prey. Too little, and they'd be shredded by flak. Every second was a dance with death. A sudden shout cracked over the intercom. "Bandits! 11 o'clock high!" From the darkness, twin-engined Messerschmitt Bf 110s appeared, their silhouettes ghostly against the stars. Tracers streaked through the sky like fiery comets. The fortresses responded, gun positions blazing. The Stardust Lady shook as Alvarez's guns chattered in the tail. One fighter burst into flames, spiraling downward, but two more slipped past, raking the formation with cannon fire. "Number 3 engines hit!" McNeil shouted. Flames licked along the cowling before Hawk's co-pilot, Lieutenant Foster, activated the fire extinguishers. The flames sputtered, then died, leaving the bomber trailing smoke. "Stay with the formation!" Hawk barked. His knuckles whitened on the yoke. He knew stragglers were dead men. Minutes felt like hours. The bombers pressed onward, battered but unbroken, until at last Berlin loomed ahead. Below, the city was cloaked in darkness except for the glow of anti-aircraft fire. The sky became a storm of light and steel. Dozens of searchlights locked onto the bombers, pinning them like moths. Flak roared, shaking the heavens. "Bomb bay doors open!" McNeil called, his voice steady despite the chaos. The crew held their breath as they approached the target. Anti-aircraft shells burst so close that shards punched through the fuselage, rattling inside like hail. O'Connor screamed as a fragment tore across his shoulder, but he fought to keep firing, his blood dripping onto the floor. "Steady!" Hawk growled, holding the fortress level. "Bombs away!" The Stardust Lady released her payload. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The bombs fell like iron rain, disappearing into the inferno below. Seconds later, explosions rippled across Berlin, sending plumes of fire into the night. "Direct hit!" McNeil shouted triumphantly. But the celebration was short-lived. A flak burst detonated just beneath the wing, jolting the bomber violently. Alarms wailed as the hydraulic system bled pressure. "We're losing fuel!" Foster cried. "Get us out of here!" Alvarez yelled. "We won't last!" Hawk banked the fortress hard, following the retreating formation. The battered Stardust Lady groaned, her frame trembling as if she might tear apart at any moment. The return journey was a gauntlet of fire. German night fighters swarmed like vultures, harassing the retreating bombers. One fortress ahead exploded in midair, scattering burning debris across the sky. Another spiraled down in flames, its crew's screams echoing faintly over the radio before cutting to static. Inside the Stardust Lady, the situation grew dire. O'Connor slumped against his guns, pale and bleeding heavily. Alvarez crawled forward, dragging him back to a safer position. "Hang on, Hermano," he whispered fiercely. Suddenly, a fighter dove straight at them, cannons blazing. Hawk yanked the yoke, but the fortress was sluggish, her wounded engines straining. Tracers ripped through the wing, and Miller cried out from the radio compartment as rounds stitched across his side. "Tail gunner now!" Hawk shouted. Alvarez swung his guns, letting loose a furious burst. The Messerschmitt caught fire and disintegrated, but not before riddling the fortress with holes. The crew was silent for a moment, the intercom filled only with ragged breathing. Then Miller's weak voice came through. "I'm still here, Skipper." "Hold on," Hawk urged. "We're getting you home." Hours dragged on, the bomber limping across enemy skies. By dawn, the coast of England finally emerged on the horizon. Relief swept through the crew, but fate wasn't done with them yet. The fuel gauges hovered near empty. The hydraulics were nearly gone. Landing gear was jammed. The fortress was a flying corpse. "We can belly her in," Foster said grimly. Hawk nodded, eyes fixed on the airfield. "Brace for impact." The Stardust Lady descended, engine sputtering, smoke trailing. She skimmed the runway before slamming down, metal screeching as sparks showered. The bomber skidded across the tarmac, tearing through dirt and snow before finally grinding to a halt. For a moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the crew stirred. "We made it," Alvarez whispered, tears streaking down his soot-covered face. Medics swarmed the wreck, pulling the wounded to safety. O'Connor and Miller were rushed to ambulances, alive but critical. The rest staggered out, leaning on each other, staring back at the mangled hulk that had carried them through hell and back. Hawk stood last, his hand resting on the battered fuselage. The Stardust Lady was done flying, but she had kept her promise. She had brought her men home.